Hello everyone and welcome back to Let's Talk Kashrus, presented by the Kashrus Awareness Project in conjunction with Torah Anytime. Today I am privileged to be joined by Rabbi Sholem Fishbane, Executive Director of ACO and the Kashrus Administrator at the Chicago Rabbinical Council. How are you, Rabbi Fishbane?
Great to be here. Thank you.
It's great to have you back, especially for today's topic, which is an exciting one, and one that is quite relevant. It's a topic that I know has been discussed by layman and scholar alike. Big Talmidei Chachamim have discussed the various issues, and we would call the Hamaynam, the populace, is also very interested because it's something that people like to know what they can and cannot buy, and that is Starbucks coffee and related products. Sure. So I, as a hakdama, as an introduction, I know you've done a lot of research into this topic. This is something that you've really poured a tremendous amount of time and effort into, both on a scholarly level from the halachic standpoint and on a practical level. You've been in, I don't know if it's dozens, but I'm sure it's more than that, dozens of Starbucks stores and kiosks, and you've learned a lot from really being there in the field. Mm-hmm. So, in light of all that research, before we even get into the specifics, give us an overview of what that's been like and what information you've learned from it.
Okay, yes. Starbucks is such a big part of our culture, in American culture and beyond in the whole world, and certainly that's one of the most common questions we get at our office. And to me, I chuckle where you can tell, as people age, what's important to them. Like, from a certain age, kids until teenage, it's Slurpees, everything they didn't know about Slurpees. Then they get into the coffee, and then if it's men, eventually gets into liquor. These are the things that are incredibly important to be researched, and our job, of course, is to research what we can. And I must start with an introduction into how we in the Kashrus world approach researching something like Starbucks. And it's actually very interesting. There's the Yeshuas Yaakov that brings down from the Rishonim, Rabbi Weiss brings it in his Sefer, where he talks about that when something is done for the Rabbim, when something's given or researched or given over to the Rabbim, there could be no chshashes. It has to be without any kulas. And that's the approach that we take when we research these products. And I remember sitting with our Rav Bezdin, Zechron Levach, Rabbi Schwartz, Rabbi Chaim Tovim, Rabbi Rees, our current Rav Bezdin. I sat with Rav Belsky. They all told me the same thing, that when you present to the public something like a Starbucks list of approved, not approved, what we call it's shaila free. Mm-hmm. And that's very different than if you're a Rav and someone comes to you, I bought this, can I use it? There's clichés and there's irremediations and there's all sorts of things. So you could paskin based on Shulchan Aruch that, yes, you can drink it. What we're going to discuss today is, again, shaila free, like the Yeshuas Yaakov says, shaila free. And what you do afterwards, I'll present the information, and I remember one time I was invited to speak in a very chashuv yeshiva, and they said, I said, what should we speak about? And I said, some obscure, interesting shaila in steam systems, whatever, some plant. And, they politely listened to my hour-long share. And at the end, I said, any questions? Hands shot up. What's with Starbucks? I'm like, oh, you should have told me that at the beginning. But it was funny because as I was going through the things, they were coming with what about this b'diavad, that b'diavad? I said, no. I'm talking shaila free. And that's very important when you talk
when you say shaila free, you really mean lechatchila?
Lechatchila.
No questions.
So when we get to the end and we talk about what lemaisa can someone get, you'll have to understand that I'm giving you, in my humble opinion, the shaila free part. That's the first thing. The second thing I must tell you, fascinating about Starbucks, is that there literally is not one Starbucks that's the same as the next. You would think that they do have protocol and they do have books and they do, it all boils down to, and we're going to talk about pratim in a minute, it all boils down to late night, the guy's tired and he needs to wash the dishes. And remember, Starbucks is a non-kosher restaurant. It's a non-kosher restaurant. And how every single place does it differs from literally one block to the next. It's so fascinating to me. And when I come into places and I'll say, I'm here for, first of all, you don't go in the morning when you do research.
Too hectic?
Oh, way too hectic. But that's part of the reason why Starbucks is so complicated. You can only sell coffee till about 11:30. That's like after 11:30, you either shut down or you find something else to bring in business. So that's where the sandwiches and the restaurant part kicks in. So that they are a non-kosher restaurant that also, more than also, is also a coffee house. So it's very different than a straight up all they do is coffee. This morning I actually did an initial inspection on a place that just does coffee with a couple of cold pastries to go. What a machaya. That's not how Starbucks works. Okay, so it's really important to understand that one set of rules doesn't necessarily work. That's what I've learned, and I've been in, like you said, all over the world. I make it a habit to go in, whether I'm in South Korea and they have the funniest looking or sounding types of coffees in every region, but I try to understand the patterns and understand what they do different.
It's interesting what you're saying, because a person would think that when you have franchises,
Right.
then in general there's a protocol that they follow or that they have to follow. And you're saying that even if they're following certain protocol, but as far as Kashrus is concerned, you can't make assumptions that there's something going on across the board.
Absolutely.
Which is, first of all, just a very important thing altogether, and makes it difficult to provide any generalizations about Starbucks. So.
Specifically with Starbucks. I must tell you there are other chains, and I know that's not today's subject, but something like Dunkin' Donuts, it's much more controlled, or they make it. It's actually it's easier at Dunkin' Donuts, but that's not today's subject. So those are two, I think, important points to talk about when we get into Starbucks. And
I want to add also, before we get into specifics, I know about 10 years ago you wrote a wonderful, comprehensive Lumdish article in the Journal of Halacha and Contemporary Society on the topic of Starbucks. I would be curious, before we get into the details, if that would be applicable nowadays as well, meaning are things changing so fast and from year to year that an article written 10 years ago about Starbucks may not be germane to today's discussion altogether?
Yes and no. Yes, that it gives you the outlines, it gives you the basics. And I have gotten calls from mesiftas and yeshivas where they're learning, where Rabbeim have said, this is a great article because Starbucks, it talks to people. And the fact that we can bring together, in our world, we marry together the halacha and the practical and how it comes. It's a great, people use it in yeshivas. They use it to replying the lamdas. So that's the yes part. There's a lot of the concepts are the same. No, Starbucks changes a lot. In other words, I think there's every 5 years there's a major turnover, and every 2 or 3 years there's a soft turnover, new things. So the takeaway from that article is not necessarily the same, but the concepts and the points are very much the same. So it is a good way to start. And there's a part in the article that talks a lot about something called a kiosk. And back in the day when we first started doing the research, which is referenced in that article, and that was our first Starbucks list, we gave two lists. A brick and mortar store where you order your Starbucks, which is usually owned by Starbucks. And then there's the kiosks, the ones you find in the airports, the one you're finding in store, like the Targets and these different places where they're much smaller. And those days they were much easier. And the main difference was that the brick and mortar, the ones that were owned by Starbucks, they were making hot sandwiches, hot meals, treif, ham and turkey and cheese and all that, and the kiosks weren't. So if you would look at the different lists, our list, there are other agencies that put out lists, you'll see Starbucks regular, this you can get, the kiosks you can get more. That has changed. That has changed because now Ruba de Ruba of the kiosks are also making hot sandwiches. So therefore, the halachas, or it's all merged into one. There's really, as a matter of fact, I must point out, there's one kiosk that are even sort of say worse, and those are the kiosks in Target. Because the kiosk in Target, and we're going to talk about very soon about how they wash their kelim, because that's the key here. But the kiosks in Target, they don't even have their own washing ability. They share a dishwasher, generally with Pizza Hut.
Oh, wow.
Everything gets thrown together with the pepperoni, pizza, whatever is going on, and the way that dishwasher works, it makes it complicated. So you would think kiosks and maybe something as small as a Target kiosk is actually the opposite. So that's for sure an important difference between the two.
Interesting. So thank you for that comprehensive introduction to this important topic. Amir Tashem will reconvene next time, and we'll discuss the exciting details of specific products, whether it's black coffee, whether it's frappuccinos, cappuccinos. I want it all. So I'm just giving you the heads up. The next time we meet, Amir Tashem, we'll discuss those details. Thank you again for being here.
Thank you.